Hello and welcome. This is the Astrology of the Week Ahead podcast. I'm your host, your astro bestie, Chani Nicholas. In this episode, we are looking at the week of March 24th. I'm not going to say we made it because we still have this week to get through, but I am going to say that March dealt out some very hefty, significant astrological signatures. So I'm recording this in the beginning part of March. I don't know what's happening at the end part of March, but I'm in March with you at least. And this week we have two very significant events and a couple of also like minor but very significant events. The two significant events that we have this week are the last eclipse in Aries near the North Node that is happening on the 29th of March on Saturday. And then on Sunday, the 30th of March, Neptune is moving into Aries. And that is huge because it takes Neptune a very long time to move through a sign, like 15-ish years. And so for it to go through the zodiac and get back to Aries is a big deal. Neptune hasn't been in Aries since 1875. So we are entering a new era. We're entering another new chapter in world history. I'm saying another because Pluto also just made its final entrance into Aquarius back in November. So to have slow-moving planets like Pluto, like Neptune, and like Uranus, which will also change signs in July, shift and change signs really notes or denotes a time where we are moving into a different type of world, right? There's a different world order, we could say. There is a changing of the guards that's happening because these planets take so long to move through a sign and they take so long to go back into a sign that we are circling back to something that might have happened a long time ago or the mirroring of something that happened a long time ago, but we're also having like a major shift of tone. So what does it mean to have the last eclipse in Aries happen a day before Neptune enters Aries for the first time since 1875? Well, it means that on one hand, in the part of our chart that contains Aries, we're closing a cycle. We're ending something that we began 2 years ago. We've been having eclipses near the North Node in Aries since March of 2023. Then, on the other hand, the next day, we have Neptune entering Aries. And a couple months later, at the end of May, Saturn will also enter Aries. So we're closing something out that we've been doing in the area of our chart that contains Aries. And at the same time, we're starting something new. Both things can be true at the same time, obviously. We can close one thing down, open something up in the same day, in the same part of our life, right? We can end a relationship and begin a new one. It doesn't have to be planned, but it's just like how life rolls sometimes. So that's happening. There's this kind of changeover that's occurring in Aries. For us collectively, this is a moment to reflect on the ways in which we've dealt with Aries topics. Aries deals with war. Aries deals with conflict. Aries deals with battle. Aries deals with heated topics. And Aries deals with courage and the ways in which we strategize or do battle. Now, since 2023, we have definitely been thrown into a series of cataclysmic events that have been really hostile and incredibly damaging to our human family, to our global families, also to the earth itself. Since 2023, since Gaza has been absolutely annihilated and basically wiped out, even though there is, from where I'm standing, a supposed ceasefire. And even that is technically not how I would describe it. But we've watched the dehumanization of a people's, of a place, of a land, of our cousins, of our family, of, our fellow humans be rapidly heightened. And then at the same time, we're living in a world where there are countries attacking one another, putting tariffs on one another for no good reason. And there's just this feeling of attack from all angles. So that has been, if we want to put it in astrological terms, kicked off, if you will, by the North Node entering Aries a couple years ago. The North Node has now moved into Pisces, so it's a different type of tone that's happening. Now there's an increase of, we could say, disinformation or an increase of feeling flooded by things that are not true. And also, at the same time, there are going to be new influences that move into Aries, aka Neptune at the end of this month on Sunday, and then in a couple months, Saturn. Because Neptune is a planet that deals with ideals and idealism and fantasy and dreams and visions and things that aren't necessarily real, but they help us to imagine new realities. With Neptune moving into Aries, there can be a feeling of, or a literal experience of, a war of ideals, or like a war of idealism, like who is ideal, what is ideal, but also like what we collectively believe in. And there can also be something akin to the Red Cross that happened, that occurred, that began the last time Neptune was in Aries, which is interesting given the name red, because Aries is ruled by the red planet. And the Red Cross is obviously, whatever you think of it now, definitely it began to make sure that people could get the help that they needed. And there's a feeling with Neptune of wanting to tend to, or be compassionate to, those that suffer, or at least to bring the boundaries down, to dissolve the boundaries of what gets in the way of being connected to one another. This period of time, the last time Neptune was in Aries, was also the time of the American Civil War. It was also the time of abolition. And it was also the time of the publishing of Crime and Punishment and War and Peace. So you can see these themes that come through with Neptune in Aries being about what we believe in, who we are, what we gather around, because Neptune is a planet that wants to unify or, again, dissolve boundaries or bring things together. But in an Aries style, it's going to be about how we deal with conflict, how we work through conflict, or how conflict gets the best of us. And I don't mean to downplay major tragedies by saying conflict, but I'm also trying to be all-encompassing from the smallest conflicts to the largest ones. And often the largest ones begin with these small things and then turn into these giant things. So we are moving into a time where we're really trying to figure out what is our ideal, what do we believe in, how do we gather people around those beliefs, and how do we make sure that the conflicts that we have on our plate already, that we already have to deal with, are held with the utmost care and creativity. The thing about fire signs is that they're highly creative. These are signs that know how to be channels for inspiration, how to be in spirit. Now, when Saturn gets here a little later in the year, at the end of May, there's going to be moments of loss, a disintegration of the structures that we're used to. But that's not even that new, because Saturn and Neptune have been traveling together for a while. I just think there's going to be more agitation about what's lost. And maybe that's a good thing. Look, there are many situations that we're dealing with right now. There are many different realities, and there are many different strategies that we need to implement. And I think a lot of us could agree, and maybe it's not the time to do so, but a lot hasn't been working about our world for a long time. And the loss of social nets, of the threat to social securities, the threat to national securities, the threat to any kind of global security that we are experiencing is terrifying and real. And I'm not trying to downplay that at all. And then there's a lot that's just being revealed that was always broken, never going to work, just a kind of false sense of security that's been trying to patch us together for the next thing. And I think what's happening right now, or what a lot of people I think can agree is happening right now, is everything that is false is being pulled back. There's so many layers of reality that are being exposed. And the corruption is just alive and kicking the world over. And the examples of what is technically wrong, legally wrong, immoral on every layer, every level of our existence are plentiful. Again, the world over. And we can no longer point to like, this is right and this is wrong, because we know it all. And the people that are doing, the systems that are doing the most harm are really unafraid, and they're definitely unashamed, and they are very flagrant. So I think our job and our task, given this astrology, given the reality of our life and our world and our situation, our job and our task is to say, well, they don't care. Like it's not time to try to find the specific fact that's going to pinpoint the problem. It's really time to say, this whole thing didn't work, doesn't work. And we need to build bridges to what will, and we need to save all the things that we can to make sure as many of us are safe and connected to the resources we need as is possible. And the reality is we were always headed here because corporate capitalistic greed, money and its systems, extractive, horrific systems have been winning this whole time anyways. And it was only ever going to get worse. So I don't like that we're here. I don't want to be here, but we are here. And we're here for some very obvious reasons. And until we deal with those reasons and choose another way, we're always going to just keep ending up back here. So when I give the examples of what happened the last time Neptune was in Aries, it doesn't mean that we have to relive those examples or the examples of what happened the last time Pluto was in Aquarius, because that's the French Revolution, the American Revolution, Haitian Revolution. I mean, yes to revolution, but do we have to keep doing it in such extreme and violent ways? I don't know. I don't know the answers, but we're back in these planetary cycles, or these planetary cycles are pointing to the last time they were there, these big, huge movements happened and these big changes happened in certain areas of the world, in certain countries. But in terms of like how global politics work, they definitely shifted things. So we're back in that time. Now, as always, I think the only thing to focus on in a very Aries fashion is our agency, is our power, is what we can do from the place that we're at in the moment that we find ourselves. And I think that's everything. And I think that the more each one of us just anchors ourselves into our agency and our power and our impact on the world and our ability to collectively gather with others that know that in themselves, or that we can inspire each other to keep being courageous, that's the best of Aries. Aries is like, no, I will blaze a new trail. I will make my own path. I don't have to keep going down this road. I'm new. Are you new? Like, I don't need to do what you've all been doing forever and ever and ever. And that's a really important sentiment, I think, to bring into both this week, this last eclipse, and this beginning of Neptune in Aries, because it's a wild time and we find ourselves in some pretty new waters, some pretty new spaces. We have never experienced Neptune in Aries before. You and I have never experienced it before. So the interesting thing is the part of your chart that contains Aries has never experienced Neptune before. So please, please, please go listen to your reading this week where I talk extensively about both Neptune and this eclipse. And we'll continue to do so in the Chani app week to week as Neptune gets highlighted in your chart. So there's a new dream that we're collectively dreaming. There's a new dream for us individually. There's a new dream for us collectively. There is a new inspiration that's entering the scene because Neptune and Aries both activate the inspiration factor. So I want us to be also attuned to that. Speaking of attunement, on Monday and Tuesday, Monday we have a Mercury cazimi, that's Mercury retrograde backing up to the sun moving forward towards Mercury and making a sextile to Pluto. That happens over Monday and Tuesday. These are gorgeous days for communicating something, for channeling something, for being filled with clarity, for finding clarity, for moving into the heart of a sticky, tricky situation or problem and being able to say the thing, to understand the thing, to receive the information that changes everything. This is an absolutely gorgeous moment to work with because of its ability to help us get to that nugget of truth and do something with it. The next thing that happens is on Thursday, we've got Venus retrograding back into Pisces. This is a tone shift. Venus moves from the place of its detriment or exile into its place of exaltation. It is still retrograde, but it has, in some ways, an easier time in Pisces. Well, in all ways, it has an easier time in Pisces, but the planetary setup is this. It backs into Neptune as Neptune is crossing the threshold between Pisces and Aries. Venus backs up over the threshold between Aries and Pisces. So they're going two different ways, but they're meeting at the gate. They're meeting at the threshold. And not only does Venus do that, but Mercury, the communicator, does that on the 29th, on Saturday, the same day as the eclipse. So within a couple of days, between Thursday and Saturday, both Venus and Mercury move from Aries back into Pisces, and they meet up with Neptune as Neptune is at the last moments of Pisces. So there is a translation, especially with Mercury doing that on Saturday. There's something so important that gets broadcast or said or explained that is kind of like otherworldly or about some kind of flooding or some kind of like overwhelm. It seems like there is a outpouring of something, that when a planet is at the last degree of a sign, it often feels cataclysmic, especially when it's a planet that takes so long to go through a sign. So we're ending something. It's not like fully in its like full end because Neptune will go back into Pisces later this year. But there seems to be this like build up compilation of greatest hits of Neptune in Pisces, which is very watery. It's very much about a flood. It's very much about too much water, about so much emotion, about a heightened escapism, a heightened idealism, and just like an overwhelm of fantasy. And both Venus makes contact with that, and also Mercury makes contact with that. So it just seems like as that happens during the last eclipse, a solar eclipse in Aries on Saturday, that's just wild astrology. I don't even quite know how to translate it, but I expect it to bring about something that can feel like a kind of tidal wave, or metaphorically seem like a tsunami kind of effect or impact. And then with the eclipse happening at the same time, and again, Neptune changing signs all within a couple of days, it's just like this, the lights go out and the lights come back on again, and things have shifted. Like we were in one reality and then we're in another one. I mean, God willing, everyone on TikTok is right and we can just jump timelines. I know all of the quantum physics theory stuff, all of it, like let's live it out. Let's go for it. If this is true and the aliens can come save us or something, I don't know. I'm down. I'm willing to experiment. I'm open to anything at this point. And that's kind of what the feeling of the last couple of days of March is like. It's like, okay, like all bets are off now. Truth is seemingly out the window. It doesn't matter if people do crimes out in public, in the highest office in the land, across the globe. Everything that we said the world was against is happening. So why are we trying to retain a sense of decorum? Why don't we act like, I've said before, villains for good? Like, how do we embrace that kind of like villain era for something that's going to be worthwhile? How do we fight back? What is our strategy? What is our way of being like, no, no more, I'm done. Again, lights go out with the eclipse, with the solar eclipse, lights come back on, and it feels like, okay, we're finished that thing. We're finished waiting for someone to come and save us. I will say that especially solar eclipses in Leo or Aries are really significant moments for leaders. So any leader in the globe, on the planet, will probably have something happen right now that is like a mark of their leadership. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just usually like, oh, leaders will definitely be in the hot seat right now. So let's test them. Let's push them. Let's say you work for us, actually. Globally, any leader elected to public office works for the people. That is it. Case closed, period, dot, end of sentence. There is no conflation. We don't work for them. They don't just get to like hoover up all of our money and all of our safety nets and all of our everything. Again, no matter where you are, this is a time, I think, for us to individually demand more from our leaders everywhere, and also to celebrate the ones that are actually doing their job and trying to resist the tyranny that is spreading across the globe. I know I keep saying that, but what else is there to talk about right now? All right. This might also be a moment where we're really gathered and inspired to go do something. So let's remember some eclipse hygiene tips and tricks. This is a solar eclipse. So this is about our conscious awareness being more connected to what is normally held in the unconscious, we could say. And it is a north node eclipse, which means the energy is way more wired. The eclipse we had a couple of weeks ago was a south node eclipse, which is about cleansing and letting go and releasing, and can also honestly feel like the air is being let out of the tires in a way. It's about the loss of something, which can be really good because we need to get rid of things and we need to go through composting cycles. But north node eclipses, this Saturday's eclipse is very different. It is a north node eclipse, so it's hungry, and it's like the hungry head of the dragon, which is what the ancients thought eclipses were, was a dragon either eating the sun or moon or the tail of the dragon wiping it out. So this is about what gets evoked in us, what hunger gets stirred in us, and what it is we come to understand about that fighting spirit in us. Where is it best used and utilized, and where do we end up burning things down that should have just been left intact? This is fire medicine, so we want to work with it really tactfully. And because on the heels of the eclipse, Neptune rolls right into the sign. So we know that we are working with this energy metaphorically, maybe even literally. Obviously, with climate catastrophe, there's a lot of fire that happens. And so what are we learning from it? And what are we learning about it? And how are we learning to contain and harness and do appropriate burns, right? Like, what do we need to burn in a container or in a contained kind of way so that, again, as I said a couple weeks ago, there's not just a whole bunch of debris laying around that is going to make things go up in flames in a disastrous way. How can we be slowly, carefully cultivating spaces where there is not too much, if any, kindling just laying around in all the worst places? Now, what we want to do with an eclipse as active as this is watch the things that begin and end. And just know that as we end the month, there is this, again, ending because it's the ending of a series of eclipses and a new beginning because Neptune moves right into Aries at the same time, basically, over the course of the weekend. So we know that there are going to be probably a couple of maybe last minute abrupt changes or changes that feel really healthy and, again, inspired in a way like, yes, that needed to get cleared out or that needed to end, and then it left space for this thing to begin. And wherever Aries is in your chart, that area of your life, whatever that area of your chart is about, whatever area of life it is speaking to, That area of your life has been so activated by all of the astrology. And this week, as Venus leaves this area of your chart, Venus retrograde leaves, and Mercury retrograde leaves this area of your chart, and the last eclipse takes place, and Neptune is left there, and the sun will still be there. There's a kind of clearing out. So after this week, and I promise you, I'm not going to come back in April and be like, there's a million changes. There's not going to be a million changes in April. In May, we're going to get into another big change, but it's not until the end of May. So we have a couple of months where there's not like big changes or big retrogrades or big eclipses or anything like that. This really is like the final moment of a month-long process of shifting things around and really activating us into the actions that we need, and also activating us to clear things out and to review the things that we needed to review. So I just want to remind everybody of our little promo that we've got going on, which is if you are new to the Chani app, if you've never used the premium version of the app, we wanted to gift you 30 days of absolutely free premium content with the code CHANI30, CHANI 30 will give you 30 days of free content. You've got weekly readings, you've got guided meditations, you've got yearly readings, you've got a whole library of affirmations, sleep stories, more meditations. So check it out if you've never joined us before and see if you like it and see if it's helpful. All right, I wanted to do another Ask Me Anything. I got a question this week about what it means if you're born under an eclipse. And this is how you can tell if you're born under an eclipse. Basically, you can just Google like eclipses the year you were born and see if you were born within a day, I would say, of an eclipse, maybe even a couple of days. But definitely if you're born on the day of an eclipse, it's such an important thing to know. If you have the sun and moon in the same sign and you have the north or south node also in that sign or within 16 degrees of it in another sign, if it's out of sign, it can be within 16 degrees. Or if you have the sun and moon in opposite signs, then you're born around a full moon and if the nodes are close by. But again, the best way to figure it out is just by Googling the dates of eclipses in the year that you were born. And then you can tell if you were born on one. And if you were born on an eclipse, it generally means that eclipse seasons are going to be extra potent for you. And if you're born during an eclipse, if you're born during a lunar eclipse or a solar eclipse, there will tend to be a kind of chaos to your life or to you in general, because that's what eclipses are. They're a time, again, where the light goes out and the light goes on. And so I generally experience, or when I give readings to people that are born on an eclipse, especially if they're born exactly on an eclipse, like the day of, that there are these things, there are these events that happen in their life that just feel like, not all the time, obviously, but they're generally people that like wild things happen to them. And the people that like everybody else around them will be like, why is it always you? Why do these things always happen to you? If you're born with an eclipse near the south node, there's going to be a lot more of a theme of giving things away, or even sometimes of loss, especially early in life. And that can obviously shift. But there's a kind of spiritual connotation to the south node that is about non-attachment. It is about being, we could say, of service, but it's also about being unattached to anything, everything. So oftentimes with people with really strong south node placements, especially if you're born during a south node eclipse, there's this vibe of like super chill, like it's okay, I'm fine. I just kind of like hang out and I don't need for much. It's the anti-FOMO. What's the anti-FOMO? JOMO, joy of missing out. That's the kind of feeling of someone with a strong south node placement. So either born on a south node eclipse or born with south node in the first house, or born, even if the sun is with the south node and there's no eclipse happening, but sun or even moon or ruler of the ascendant near the south node. Someone born on a north node eclipse or during a north node eclipse, or with the north node in the first house, say, or the sun or moon or ruler of the ascendant near the north node, there's like a voracious appetite that those people have. There's this desire to be known, a desire to be experiencing life, a desire to fulfill something, especially if the north node's in the first house or the sun is near the north node, a desire to be like really self-expressed. So the nodes are really fascinating points because they're not actual things. They're just points in space, but they're where these like events occur that are so startling to the mind. And so if we have them in a really prominent place, like first house, 10th house, I'd say, or our sun or moon, or near them, or we're born during an eclipse, we carry that energy with us. And you can feel that from people. A lot of famous people have a very potent placement, either of the nodes, or some are born during eclipses. But anyways, if you're born during an eclipse seasons every 6 months will be especially active for you. And if you're born during a Virgo eclipse or a Aries eclipse, then this March will be even more potent for you. All right, y'all. Come back next week. We'll talk more about the astrology and how it is unfolding. And really next week is our first foray into Neptune and Aries and what that might mean for us. But no big, huge, massive shifts next week. But we do, interestingly, have Mercury and Venus retrograding back to the North Node. So there will be this like reverberation of eclipse season, and I think some very important conversations that we'll have. So come back. We'll talk about it then. Listen, if you love this podcast and you get something out of it, please share it with your friends, with your people, if they're into astrology. If they're not, you can miss them with this. Or you could give it to them and harass them with it. I get a lot of people like that. I get a lot of people that come up to me and be like, my wife sends me your podcast all the time. I'm always like, I'm sorry. Anyways, I'm sending you lots of love. Thanks for sharing it when and where you do. Bye for now.